Welcome to this Nation in Conversation session with John Deere at Nampo 2023. Today we're going to talk specifically about the principle of achieve more with less. And we're going to talk about John Deere, and for most of the farmers in this area, John Deere is known in the grain industry as a major player. Probably the leading player in a lot of the areas that they compete in. But we're going to talk about the move towards high-value crops. And we're going to talk about why that's important, where the opportunities is, and why John Deere decided to move in that direction, what is the products on offer. So let me just introduce the panel today. And I'm very privileged to have not only Americans on the panel from the US, but also from South Africa, and then people in the industry. So next to me is Sean Zundberg. He's John Deere Business Integration Manager USA. Sean, welcome.
Thank you.
And I look forward to your contribution. Chase Chapansky, Gus, and we'll talk about Gus, John Deere Chief Technology Officer, USA, and we'll talk about that. Then Stian Klute, John Deere South Africa. Stian, welcome. Thank you very much. Stian, I'm going to start with you, so I'm going to prepare you beforehand. I'm going to start with this idea of moving from grain to high-value crops, but let me get to my panel. Rian Brimmer from Agri Technovision. You actually flew in from the west coast of America, so jet lag for you is a bit of a major issue.
KZN, South Africa.
KZN, South Africa.
Yes.
That's where you are based.
Yes.
We'll talk about that. And then Ant Goebel, South Africa Macadamia Industry, the Vice Chair. Thank you very much, Ant.
Thank you.
Let's start, Stian. The idea of moving from grain, which John Deere has a dominant position in South Africa in the grain market, move from grain to high-value crops. What's behind that?
Thanks to you, Jan. You've said it. I think we are very well established in this segment when you look at grains and what we can do with technology in grains, the value that we can unlock through technology. And what's exciting is we want to see the same happening in high-value crops, as you've just mentioned, and where the level we are looking at currently in grains is we want to solve for profitability. That's what will build farmer resilience at the end of the day and what will sustain your presence on the farm, and where we can, on a hectare or smaller area, determine the profitability of your crop, report that out through a product that we call Harvest Profit. And that all happens on a foundation that sits on Operations Center in our data repository, all our as-applied data that's accurately recorded. And we want to see the same happening and the same value being unlocked in the high-value crop segment. So very excited to see what the rest of the panel will say.
Now, let's talk, Sean, this move towards high-value crops. Why did John Deere decide to move there, and what's on offer?
So it's a great question, and the way I look at it is that large grains, so corn and soy, has really undergone the transformation with technology already previously, and it has lagged a bit in high-value crops. We looked at it as we did a major transition organizationally and said a large part of cropping around the world is high-value crops, and we've not done a good job of addressing it in the past. We've had focus, but then we kind of naturally go back to corn and soy. And when we went and did the math and looked at the incremental addressable market opportunity that exists around the world in high-value crops, we're like, okay, we've got to do a better job. And what that's really enabled us to do is to form a perspective of, okay, we don't have to do everything on our own. We can have partnerships. We can, like with Chase and the Gus team, we can take a look at it and say, how do we utilize other companies and bring some strengths from Deere and to complement the strengths that Gus has in this instance to go and really tackle some opportunity. And it's all about addressing issues that growers have and presenting solutions that will ultimately help them, whether it's controlling cost or ultimately impacting their bottom line.
That Chase, Gus. What's Gus?
Gus. So Gus Automation, we build autonomous orchard sprayers designed for orchards and vineyards. So we've got a couple different models now, but they are fully autonomous. So you buy, 1 to 4 sprayers, however many you need, and they'll go out and spray the field autonomously. while one person sits in a pickup truck or a gator or something like that and monitors those sprayers while they're out in the field.
And there's one on the John Deere floor exhibition.
There is one here today. It's the first one in South Africa.
And just to talk about autonomous, just define autonomous. What does it actually mean?
So autonomous means that the sprayer is going to go out and navigate its way through the field all by itself. It's going to turn the spray on and on its own. What it won't do is decide where it's going to go next. It requires the operator to say that you're going to do these 10 rows in this field, or you're going to do these 20 rows in this field, and this is how you're going to do it. And then the sprayer is going to go out and execute on what the operator has told it to do. So that'll be navigating, making turns at the end of the row. Maybe they're going to every row, every other row. It'll go the correct speed, spray RPM, spray pressure, monitor its flow rate as it's going to ensure it's doing the job correctly.
Rian, in terms of technology and precision farming, why is there opportunity in high-value crops?
Thanks, Steve. I think in the space we are in today, it's very important to fertilize effectively. Because of inputs and everything becoming higher and higher, we want to be more effective in what we apply in the field. And measuring that, you can go back to the old saying, is if to measure is to know. If you go into a precision-based farming to apply variable rate application with the technology, at the end of the day, the saving, you have to know what to put where and when to put that, obviously. But the savings on that by itself is a major thing. And not just the efficiency, but yeah, in the space where a crop like macadamias or something like that is now, it's very, very important to be efficient and effective in the cost save as well.
And your comment on specifically why it's so important?
Well, in the macadamia industry in South Africa, we're the biggest in the world, but we didn't know how many hectares we had in the ground until a year ago. So we commissioned a study, something using various technology. We managed to test it and ground truth it, and so now we've got 72,000 hectares in the ground, of which half of them aren't producing at the moment. So
Half of them aren't producing.
they're not producing a single nut at the moment. So in the next 5 years, all that's going to be producing, never mind what gets planted in the next couple of years. So the scale of macadamia farms has increased exponentially. We talk about high-value crops. At the moment, the macadamia price has dropped quite significantly. So it might be a long-term crop, but it's not a high-value crop right now. But it's still higher than most other crops. So with that in mind, the last few years, everyone's been throwing more money at producing more. So every rand they spend, if an advisor comes and said, put an extra kg of nitrogen, put extra, the guys have said, well, I can get a bit more out of my crop, I'll do that. Whereas in the current market, where the prices have contracted a bit and farm production has stabilized a bit more, everyone's now looking at the efficiency factor, and I think that's the important thing, is efficiency. So everyone's looking at, instead of doing blanket sprays, go scouting, get that information, but get it onto a platform where you can bring it through and have an autonomous sprayer go and spray that area that you need to spray, as opposed to spraying your whole farm. So that's where we're heading, is everyone wants to be more efficient, do more with less, or produce a lot more with what you're doing. So put your fertilizer at the right time, spray at the right time. Those are the keys that are being unlocked, but it's taken years of trial and error for us to get to this point where the market is now ready for these interventions.
And how does software and hardware, where does it come in?
So if we go back, if I had to redo my farm, connectivity is your starting point. And unfortunately, with load shedding in South Africa and cell towers being down, if I had to relay every irrigation pipe, I'd have a fiber cable in that trench. So that's one of the issues we juggle with in South Africa. But getting integration between hardware and software is where the key, for me, needs to be unlocked, because everyone's got the best system for their product, but we need that integration so that we can, as management, apply that and pick the best solution using various forms of information. You know, your scout will go and scout and say there's a certain amount of stink bug in the field. You know what your fertilizer map says, so now you might be able to combine sprays, you might do certain things at the same time, but we need to be able to pull information from various sources onto a platform like a Power BI or any other platforms that are out there. But APIs have unlocked that, where we can do that. We can pull information across, and those are the specialists we need on our farms, is pulling information together through the various platforms.
Stian, the John Deere data or the John Deere operating system, where does that fit into what Ant is saying?
So that is kind of the foundation that we want to work off, the platform where you will launch all these solutions from. So the data repository that I referred to earlier on Operations Center as applied data, but taking a step back maybe, and again, what you alluded to earlier is doing more with less. We want to see the same happening in the high-value crop segment. I think we've got a lot of those puzzle pieces together at the moment, and I think something John Deere is proud of that we do well is identifying the right partners. We've got Gus here next to us, and another thing that we would like to mention is John Deere never failed at solving a customer's problem. Where we have failed is solving problems that didn't exist, and Gus is not one of those.
Solving problems that don't exist.
That don't exist. That could
Some
happen.
people are very good at that.
Yeah, you do see that in especially the ag tech space. But no, too, so that is where that data comes together. That's where the actionable insights will come out of. But we need all the ingredients, and something that is very exciting is things that Agritech Innovation is working on, and that's their clip logger. You can maybe talk about that a little, and that is because we need the data. You need the whole ecosystem for it to function and to solve for profitability.
Okay, while we're on that, perhaps I'll just ask you, Sean, the question, and I'm going to come back to Rian about software specifically, but a question that's always floating around is who owns the data? And I just want to get, purely for clarification purposes, John Deere's view on the data and the ownership of the data.
The data belongs to the grower.
To the farmer.
The farmer. It's their land, it's their crop. We work with them. And I look at it this way, data is power.
Yeah.
And we work with them to bring better decision making to the table and help gather that data and use it, and we store it and we house it and allow them access to it so that they can work and manage their operation to the highest amount of efficiency that they can to produce the highest amount of crop out of it.
So although the data belongs to the farmers need to realize that if they don't share that data, they're not going to benefit from the data.
I would agree with that 100%, is that if you choose not to share the data and utilize the data, you're not going to maximize the productivity out of the machine and the equipment that you're buying and operating. So it's really in everybody's best interest to utilize that, have the data flow through John Deere Ops Center in this case, and then be able to make those decisions better on a much more timely basis.
Rian, in terms of high-value crops, Stian alluded to things that you work with. Can you perhaps elaborate on that?
Yeah, at the end of the day, Agritech Innovation is correctly like what Sean said, is everything is about the data. The data, if you've got the data, you've got power. And you can make a decision around a certain situation. At the end of the day, we are working with something that's called Pick Logger. Okay, that's just one of our precision services that we actually offer, is that it's the first yield maps for a high-value crop such as citrus, avos, mangoes, anything that you can pick. All right, we even done it with veggies like melons, watermelons, stuff like that. So at the end of the day, it's the same as taking a soil sample or a leaf sample. Everything is about that data to make a decision on that and to revert back to that. And the accuracy and the precision, everything is GPSed. So at the end of the day, the farmer knows what is the current status of the soil or the current status of the harvest of the crop, and then you can investigate why is it low or why is it high. And then that integrates again with hardware, such as the autonomous sprayers or anything in that regard, or a variable rate fertilizer applicator or something like that.
So just to come back, Sean and Chase, I'm gonna spend a bit of time around the John Deere process and the opportunities they see in high-value crops. If you look at the entry into that market, obviously there's established players in that market. What would give a farmer comfort that John Deere would be a leading player in that market?
I mean, that's a great question. And I look at it this way, is that, that the way that John Deere does business, if we decide to do something, we're going to do it the right way. We're going to do the market research. We're going to understand the needs. We're going to develop a list of solutions that we believe that we can come, and then we're going to go validate it. So doing all of that market research in advance will help the grower have confidence that, hey, John Deere is bringing a solution that's going to really work for me and empower me to, at the end of the day, produce more and make more money for my operation. I would also say that when we look at the breadth of what we can bring to the table and having a regional focus, we can bring the best from different areas of the globe that would allow us then to implement a better solution. And then at the end of the day, I always come back to this. It's really about the John Deere dealer and the level of customer support and service that they provide. I will be, and obviously I'm a bit biased in this, but I believe that the John Deere dealer does it better than anybody and taking care of the customers that they serve.
Jace, your specifically autonomous technology, I assume it is not going to stop and end at Gus. Are you working on other applications?
So right now, we're definitely focused on permanent crop. That's kind of the market that we want to be in, but it's not just air blast spraying. We do have a herbicide sprayer as well, and we want to expand into other permanent crops. Like right now, we mainly deal with nuts, stone fruit, and vineyards, but we want to migrate more into maybe berries or maybe larger trees. So we're thinking a couple more models that could be a little bit smaller to get into some of those tight row spacings, maybe some bigger models, continue building out our line. But for now, you know, the future, the next few years definitely looks like we're going to stay in permanent crop and maintain spraying because that's where our expertise is. We came from a commercial application, commercial spraying background, so that's what we know, that's what we live and breathe every day. So that's where we want to stay focused, and we think we can make the biggest impact on to the customer.
Just a off-the-cuff comment. Why is that Gus autonomous sprayer not the same color as the tractors?
I can give an answer first.
Sure, go ahead.
So we've been in partnership now for a year with Gus. We love everything that they do and the value that they bring to the table. It is a stainless steel machine because it goes really pretty slow through the crop that it's spraying. That has to be able to resist the chemical that is likely going to get around it. And then the other part is I love John Deere green and yellow paint. But when you go through an orchard, the branches would likely scratch it and mar it, so it wouldn't look fantastically good, where the stainless steel, it looks marvelous.
Yeah. Stainless steel takes a lot of work to kind of form. It's a lot more work to form and to weld and everything, so it kind of hurts my heart a little bit if we go and cover it with paint. You know, I like to have the stainless, show the craftsmanship, so that's a lot of the reason it stays stainless. Yeah.
If you were to advise a South African farmer, in terms of looking at something like Gus, what would that farmer take into the consideration when deciding?
Yeah, that's a good question. So you would have to assess your operation and to see what you'd be able to unlock. What value will you unlock through going that way? And Ant alluded to connectivity being the starting point, the foundation. That's where you start. What value can you unlock through something like connectivity? I would start there and then see how I can manage my operation and get more data and sensors to feed into my central point, and then see what opportunities do exist outside of that.
As a grower, Ant, how would you approach that decision?
So on the flip side, we also have to plant to embrace the technology. So there are limitations of technology, and obviously the guys, and we were talking earlier about how in KZN in our really steep areas, how we're going to get around the contours, and we planted on that. For tree shakers, things like that, we've got to skirt our trees a bit higher when we grow them from early on. It's better that we start training them in that way. So we're going to move to high density planting, so that the nature of where we're going to plant in the next 10, 15 years isn't what's being planted now. So those solutions will have to adapt to how farming is going to change. So there's a lot that the farmer has to do to be able to use the product. It's a solution, but you can't. It's not a one-sided solution. You need to work together to say, what do I need to change on my farm to be able to embrace the technology and get the benefit out of it, but also what's coming down the line and how do we design technology to cater for that.
But in the end, it must make financial sense.
It must. tree shakers, for example, it's not Gus the sprayer, but that people have made more money or paid off the machine from the nuts that were left in the tree after harvesting by hand. They brought in a shaker, and that's what's been left behind. We were talking about that just now, and how those nuts on the macadamia side that are left in over winter harbour pests, which become a problem in the following year. So never mind the extra income that you got from doing it more efficiently with a machine, safety of not having people climbing trees, knocking out nuts from trees, nuts sitting on the ground for weeks on end, going moldy, things like that. There's also the benefit of your quality improves, and that's the other key aspect. Is everyone thinks yield, we're looking at tonnage, but it's yield, it's tonnage and quality. So damage from pests, but also handling of nuts. The softer you handle them, the better your crackouts will be, the better your quality will be.
Now yield is one thing, but yield comes at a cost. And Rian, if you look at the opportunities in the high value crops, where do you see the opportunities specifically, as Ant referred to, even if prices are not in your favor? Where does the opportunities lie specifically in the high value crop space?
I think again it boils down to the gap between inputs and turnover per hectare, because there is a fine line. If one's input were at the state where it surpasses that line, it would not make financially sense. So again, it boils down to effectivity or effectivity of application, whether it be spraying, whether it be fertilizer, whether it be irrigation. But at the end of the day, the efficiency plays a big role, and then monitoring thereof, in-season monitoring. You're going to have to be malleable to, for instance, a spray program because of pest pressure. You're going to have to be malleable in a season if you have a very wet season or a dry season. So I think farmers of today has to be very adjustable. It's not like the olden days. You have one practice and that's what works, and that's what's creating high yield. So high yield is definitely one thing. It does come at a cost, but like Ant said correctly, quality at the space where, if I can just use macadamias as an example, if you don't have really good quality, some of the processing facilities won't even accept your nuts. So it really, there's a fine lines of a lot of things, and well balance of that is important.
And it comes back to the usage of the data, the effective usage of the data, and to know what the yield is, what the cost is, what the quality is, and how do you get the ideal mix.
And you can only do that by monitoring your soil with precision soil samples, with leaf samples, year upon year, and make that informative decisions.
Stian, you are responsible in South Africa, specifically around these kind of things. How do you see the entry into the market in terms of, from a strategic point of view?
So the way we would like to engage with our customer, and our dealers are, maybe one step back, our dealers are good at engaging at whichever level. So regardless of what level of adoption you are at, our dealer can support you. And we see it, what we use, the term internally is automation to autonomy, as an example. So
automation to autonomy.
To autonomy. So that's kind of how we would map out the journey. So you'd start
but
with
autonomy has a preparation. There's a preparation to become autonomous. You can't decide one day I want to be autonomous. It's a process.
Absolutely, yeah. We don't want to set our customer up for failure, right? So you want to take him through that journey, make sure that he understands everything and the effect everything has on his farm. If you go all of a sudden change everything on your farm, you're not going to know what really had that effect that you saw. But if you go and get that incremental changes implemented, then you can really measure and know what you're doing, and then the next step is so much easier.
Sean, in terms of, let's say, we were talking about now about the route or the way towards autonomy. And that goes for all technology. There's a pathway to being technologically effective or to implement the latest technology. Now, that pathway or that requirements to get there, what is some of those building blocks?
So I look at the whole challenge is identifying when the time is appropriate. And from the conversations that we've had globally with growers is that time is now, that they're starting to look at what is it going to take for me to be able to utilize the technology and even migrate to an autonomous type solution. So you're going to, first, when we look at it, we have to have the ability to have some connectivity. So that's where the infrastructure has to be there. And even if you start taking a look at other migration points with the whole sustainability movement, we always get asked, hey, when is there going to be electric options? Is there battery coming along the road? You have to have the infrastructure in place to be able to recharge and recharge rapidly so that you're not detrimental to your productivity. So I think that it's really bringing in, and what I really enjoy is that our John Deere dealers now are at a scale that they have the expertise to really help that grower understand, okay, we have to do this, we need to do this, we need to have the JD Link on the John Deere tractor, we have to have Service Advisor remote, we have to flow our data through Op Center, we need, whether it's a tower system to really hone in the GPS, all of that stuff really plays hand in hand to be able to get the most out of your machine that you're going to be able to do.
And your dealer infrastructure and the John Deere network will be able to assist the grower to get to that level.
Absolutely right, yes. They can, regardless of where they are on the journey, they would engage and support the customer.
In order to get to where they... And I assume that each customer might have a different end goal, or each grower will have a different application in terms of technology.
Absolutely, yeah.
Absolutely.
In terms of Gus, Chase, if you look at this is, as far as I know, the first time we've seen this autonomous sprayer in South Africa. Am I correct?
Yep, that's correct.
In terms of the rollout, where's your planning?
So we're in a pretty early phase right now. That's a lot of the reason that I'm here, is to get out onto some customers' farms, see what the crop is like, kind of what are their growing habits, how does the tree grow versus trees in California or Florida or Australia where we're already in markets, see if there's any modifications to the machine we need to make. You know, we don't want to just say, hey, you have to work with the machine that we build and that's that. Like, we want to be successful in South Africa, and we want to make sure that the growers are successful as well with Gus. So if that means that we have to make some changes to make that happen, then that's really what we're here to find out, to make sure that when we do deliver, it's going to go successfully. So tentatively, we're still maybe a year and a half away from having production units here, but we will have this unit here in the country. It'll stay for quite a while. Hopefully do some customer demos later in the year, get it to move around, get some more eyes on it, more feedback, things like that. And just slowly start taking those steps of, okay, what do the customers need? Really see all that out, then we can make the decisions of, okay, these are the changes we need to make. Start training dealers, set up our dealer networks, that way we can properly support the customers, and then get the sprayers out into customers' hands after that.
How many of those units are in the US and around the world currently?
We have about 220 of them operating.
Mostly in the US?
Mostly in the US. Probably 95% are in the US. We have a handful in Australia as well. And we're in various different markets in the US. We started in almonds and pistachios, but have moved into citrus, stone fruit, vineyards, kiwis, quite a few different things, some hazelnuts. Obviously, macadamians are pretty popular here, and I think it'd be a great fit for Gus.
And over time, you would like to see those kind of markets in South Africa also utilizing the technology?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, in any vineyard that it works in California, you know, it should work in very similar environments here. We have to look at row spacing. You know, if we're dealing with contours or side slope or things like that we don't deal with in California, that's a lot of what we're here to find out and, you know, see, is it something that the grower can change? Is it something that we need to change? We don't want to go out and say, okay, yeah, you have to change all your fields if you want to use Gus. We want to make sure that we can adapt to what the grower already has. You know, if they just planted it a few years ago, it's not like they're going to start taking out vines or trees or something just to accommodate Gus. So we have to do our part to make sure that it'll work in their environment.
Now, am I right, Sean? Gus is a building block. It's a step into high-value crops. But true to John Deere's tradition, it's not going to be a one-trick pony.
Sure.
It's part of a journey.
I would agree with that. It's a very important part. When we looked at how do we bring more positive, impactful solutions to high-value crop business, Gus was one of the first steps. And being able to take a machine that sprays autonomously to deliver that impact was huge. I would say that next steps may be integration of technology onto utility tractors in a high-value crop space. So we think that if you're a grower and you have dedicated tractor blast sprayer, and if you're in that market to buy a new tractor blast sprayer, really should be Gus, because that is a dedicated sprayer. It's the best blast sprayer that's out there on the market today, and it happens to do it autonomously. There will always be a need for utility tractors, though, and certain road conditions, certain spacing, certain terrain that you need. So if you can then integrate that technology and have an autonomous tractor with a diesel engine or battery or what have you, then you can really bring a full envelope of product. And then you also want to talk about the precision aspect of it. So whether it's a sustainability movement, whether it's the cost of the chemical that you're really trying to control, being able to apply that chemical better, not negatively impacting yield, but doing it more efficiently and reducing your cost while still getting the maximum yield is what we're driving toward. There's certain companies that we're looking at to say, can we take an approach like we did with Gus to bring in married together technology to not just impact labor and giving the farmer flexibility with their labor that Gus does, but then also controlling the chemical application as well.
Stian, in terms of South Africa specific, something that for me was very interesting is how John Deere was at some point not really in the small tractor market, and then moved towards that very successfully. How's that going?
It's going very well, and I think that's what our dealer network is very good at, is selling the value and what value it will unlock. The whole solution, selling a solution and not necessarily just a product. I think that has brought us a long way.
And that's where your platform is also critical.
Correct.
Right, let's move towards a bit of pure practical advice for the grower, because that's your customer in the end, is the grower. And I'm going to start with you, and I'm going to use this as kind of starting to wrap up the conversation in terms of the application in the high value crop specifically. If you look at the challenges facing the high value crop, what would you expect from a technology provider, either a John Deere in terms of hardware with the platform, as well as from a precision farming software enterprise? What's kind of what you're looking for from a solution point of view?
So we're looking for real-time data that can be integrated. So that's where we need that aggregated data, which we've spoken about, even from a SAMIC point of view, but also in local areas. The farmers are sharing. If a pest hits one farm, if that information is communicated through, then everyone knows to look out for it.
And that becomes sharing data.
So sharing data. So the sharing is critical. The data has very little value if a farmer keeps it to himself.
Yeah.
If it's aggregated, if it's anonymous, but it's shared, it creates huge power, because the data, his own data, becomes valuable when it comes back to him in relation to other people's data. And I think that's where we need to get the mindset of farmers that the sharing is actually more beneficial to them than by holding on to it, and that there aren't any negative pitfalls to that.
I fully agree with you. I think there's sometimes the sharing of data is misunderstood. And the value in the data is specifically aggregating data.
As long as everyone's checking on the same practices, and that everyone, some people then piggyback on other farmers, on their neighbors, but they don't actually do any of the scouting or checking, which then creates animosity. So the farmers need to work together to be able to get the right solutions. The technology that's out there is amazing, but it needs to be used in conjunction with real-time data. Like Rian was saying just now, there's no season that's the same. Every season is different, but parts of the season might be similar. So you can use past experience or learn from other people in other areas what they did and what was successful, what was not successful, to counteract those conditions. On maize, we've had to use tractors to get into fields because it's too wet, and then a few years later it's too dry. In high value crops, we have those same things where each season there's a different issue to deal with, but we've dealt with parts of those over the last number of years, and we need to draw on that experience, but make real-time decisions, and then have the equipment to react quickly to that. So that solution needs to be fairly quick. We can't then start looking for a solution off the shelf. We need to have adaptable machinery that can fulfill that, cover that solution that we require.
But the key then is real-time data, be able to get information of aggregated data, but then act on that.
Yes.
From your point of view, Rian, if you look at the opportunities, and I want to link to what Ant noted, where are we in terms of opportunities in regards to sharing of data and real-time data?
So I think at the end of the day, the data, just speaking on my own experience, is that we at Agritech Innovation, all of the growers' data is on a platform, and I think there's a lot of companies generating a platform like that, and that's to make data more practical. That's for a farmer to on a scouting report that you'll have. It's the week 25 of the season. It goes into the file, and it's never seen before. At the end of the day, if you have a live platform where you can get your heat maps of where's insect pressure, that would integrate very, very good with something like autonomous sprayer to ease the management. And then also you can go back in history and view that data again. So that's where data for us, at the end of the day, we call it precision pest monitoring. So that's where data at the end of the day becomes practical. And you can refer back to it season upon season if you have similar properties. Conditions.
But it needs to become practical.
That's the key, Theo. At the end of the day, sometimes a farmer even builds up his office with all these stacks of books and data, but you never refer back to it, and it just collects dust. And at the end of the day, you have to have a live platform you can refer back to, either yourself or your consultant, your advisor, or your team, whoever. But at the end of the day, data is power. If you look at how just in the grain industry, varieties have changed, and the information we have based on what type of soil we plant, what type of variety. And I mean, if you go further, we really have to put a big strive into utilize the data that we collect every day.
I've sometimes, for me, the problem is you can get the data, but if you don't have a system to use the data, it doesn't mean anything. Mm-hmm. And I think that's where things like your data, Ant's data, but also the different data points generated by the different mechanization instruments or implements on a farm. But it needs to get together somewhere. It needs to be collated. Yep. And that collation it's one thing to get the data, but it's the other thing to put it together on a platform. Mm-hmm. What's the benefit of, let's say, the John Deere operating system?
So I look at it this way, and then I'll turn it to you, is that having the data housed in one place that is easy to access and to get the data out of it so that you can make those decisions is it's vital, right? If you don't have that, like you mentioned, if I have a stream of data here, a stream of data here, then I can't tell. So you have to have a way that it's aggregated and makes it even more powerful. And that's where I look at the John Deere Ops Center being there as a place that can do that, and it can get the data from a variety of different platforms, and it's yours. You have your business right there that you can then manage and make decisions off of.
Now we've heard from Rian from a precision farming perspective and from a grower perspective. I'm going to focus the last few minutes, because I see we close to out of time, the last few minutes on specifically this side of the discussion. I'm going to start with you, Stian. If you look at the high value crop opportunity in South Africa, how will you describe that?
Yeah, it's a lucrative opportunity, and like I said, it's a bit of a chicken egg scenario. And getting back to, there are so many aspects to cover. It's the data, the collection of the data, the sharing of the data, and then beneficiating the data, then to come back into our ops center to then have actionable data to do something with it practically, and then having the machinery that can act on that. So it's a whole process that needs to fall in place, but it's a lucrative opportunity, and there are many opportunities to really optimize on farm specifically for profitability.
And you believe that's an area where there's a focus for John Deere to move towards?
I would agree with that holistically, because I had the opportunity to visit with some South African growers that were actually in Iowa last week. all of a sudden we met the largest apple grower in the southern hemisphere, who says, okay, and he saw Gus. We were demonstrating Gus, and he's like, okay, that's the type of stuff that I need so that my future looks brighter, because a company like Deere and Gus are coming together and bringing me those solutions. And then being also the biggest macadamia nut industry in the world, there's a big opportunity here, and that's why we worked with the team here at John Deere in South Africa to bring Gus down here to be able to showcase it at Nampo, and then be able to go with Chase coming in to be able to go and do some trials and tests to make sure that's the ideal solution for them.
Sian, I'm going to throw just a bit of a curveball. My cell phone can do 50 times more than I use it for. It can probably go to the moon or something that I don't know about. But it can do a lot more things. To what extent does the South African grower utilize everything that can be utilized from a data, from an operational, from a precision farming point of view, do you think?
I think with our market conditions and the challenges our growers are facing, we are actually good at adoption when you compare us to the rest of the world. I wouldn't call out a percentage, but I would say that we rank up there. Just because of a lack of support, if I may call it as it is. So I would say adoption is actually quite good, but there is so much more to unlock, and that is exactly where we are working with our dealer and our channel to have that capability to show the farmer, this is where you are, this is your baseline, and that's your journey to improve. That is extremely important to understand where you are at and what is your next step.
In order to get there.
Absolutely.
Otherwise, you're not going to get there.
Correct.
Chase, a last point from your point of view. If somebody out there, let's say the apple farmer, macadamia farmer, citrus farmer, grape farmer, think, but this is interesting, I need more information. What would your advice be to that person?
More information about Gus?
Gus, specifically Gus.
Yeah. I guess really reach out to us. We're always looking for new opportunities, new markets. We're not afraid to, take dedicated trips wherever it is to go meet with that grower, see what their fields are about. And we'll be honest if Gus is going to be a good fit for them or not. Like I said, we don't want to put Gus somewhere where it's going to be unsuccessful.
You sell a solution, not a product.
We sell a solution, exactly, yep. And we'll do whatever we need to make sure that customer is successful using our experience from commercial spraying. So yeah, we provide Gus, we provide the laptop, the user interface, but a ton of what we do is train the customer how to be more efficient. So we don't want to just take Gus and replace what they're already doing, we want to make them more efficient. So whether that's through like nurse truck operation, so the sprayers aren't having to drive back to the pump to refill, maybe it's just how they lay out the field to cover it more efficiently with sprayers, going single row versus skip row. Just a few tips and tricks that we've learned along the way is from our 40 years of commercial spray experience, because that's all we did was try to gain efficiency in that business. So we want to pass along our knowledge of how do you spray efficiently, how do you get the job done, how do you ensure it's done correctly. We want to pass on that to the customer as well.
Sean, I'm going to end up with you, but first, is there anybody with a question, any specific question anybody would like to ask the panel? I'm going to, Sean, ask you for almost, give us a kind of a closing comment.
Okay.
Your key message to the South African farmer that is in what we call the high value crop space from a John Deere point of view.
Okay.
What is the key takeaway?
The key message from this entire conversation that I gathered from it is technology is here, data is powerful, John Deere and the John Deere Dealer Network, Gus, are doing a marvelous job working together to give you access to that technology to make the best decisions for you as a grower, to make the most money and to deliver the product that needs to be grown to feed the world. I look at it this way, we need to do something and make it easy for them to use, and the operations system, Op Center, as we call it, the way that Gus has made it extremely easy to operate a machine that could be very, you'd be a little scared of it, nervous around it, super easy to operate. So it's taking those steps that really enable the grower to say, okay, John Deere is here, they're going to do what is necessary to allow me to be better, and they're going to do it in a way that works for me. And it's really a migration from, in the past it might have been, we're making a sale, we're going to sell a product. It's more consultative work now. if we look at the partnership that we can bring with growers to say it's not just a sale, it's a strategic relationship that we're working to feed the world and do it in a better and more sustainable way.
Stian, with a technology underpin.
To absolutely establish your baseline, understand where you're at, what are you aiming for, set your goals and targets, and see how technology can unlock that value. Don't just go and blindly adopt technology and not knowing what the effect would be. Make sure you understand where you are and where you want to go to.
I just want to, as a last word, emphasize specifically to you guys from, let's say, head office. Remember, the South African farmer does not get any assistance from government. Therefore, these things are paramount for us to be able to compete worldwide, and our farmers are probably some of the best farmers in the world simply because they don't get government support. And I think that's why these kind of things is incredibly important for the South African farmer, and I do think the South African farmer will embrace any new technology, specifically a focus from somebody like John Deere. So thank you very much. I wish you all the best, and I look forward to how John Deere enters the high-value crop market. Thank you very much, guys. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.